writer of Hebrews in chapter number 12 says, pursue peace with all and pursue apartness or set apartness, without which no one shall see the master. Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-minute Torah, day 2 of Kedoshim, set apart ones. And we're going to continue in Leviticus or Vayikra chapter 19. Verse 2, at the end of the verse says, as we read yesterday, be set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am set apart. Yah here is encouraging, requiring, admonishing us to be even as he is. And one might think, well, that's absolutely impossible, Mary. We can't accomplish the absolute supreme nature of the Most High. Over in chapter number 10 of Vayikra, Leviticus, after Nadav and Abihu have transgressed the boundaries and the fire of Yah has consumed them, Yah says in verse 3, by those who come near me, let me be set apart, and before all the people, let me be esteemed. Set apartness, the more common phrase that we use in English, is holiness. The idea of being holy. It is to take on the likeness of character, the likeness of esteem, the likeness of word and deed of the Most High, being as he is. And it's oftentimes rendered in a negative connotation where people would say, well, you're trying to be holier than thou, or you're too holy, or you think you're so holy, well then, and here comes the cutting remarks. But here Yah is saying, you are to be set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am set apart. It's similar to the phrase where Yah speaks to Abraham and says, walk before me and be perfect. In our English language, we look at perfection as something we strive for, but we're never going to get it. Once you really focus on perfection, you find all the imperfections. And the list of those often is too long to rightly deal with. But the word perfect there in English is not really suggestive completely of what the Hebrew is actually saying. It's tamim, which means to be whole. Be a whole person, be wholehearted, be wholly focused, be rightly focused, live a complete life. So it's a little different than perfection. Here we're talking about being Kedoshim or being Kadosh, being set apart. What is that? Well, beyond everything else, there's a long list of things. It means not being common. I was raised with my siblings in a church, the Church of God that we grew up in, and it was considered a quote-unquote holiness church. The better term would be Pentecostal church. And so, yes, we grew up Pentecostal, and there was a lot of holiness preaching. As a younger child, there was a lot of admonitions about women not cutting their hair or wearing jewelry or makeup and long sleeves and more very, very modest dress. And young girls should not be wearing pants. They should only be wearing dresses. All of that kind of stuff out of the early to mid-60s, which was carryover from previous decades. The attempt was sincere. The idea was to be a set-apart people, to be a separate people, to be a easily distinguished, identifiable people as belonging to the Most High. The effort, being sincere, was not always carried out in righteous heart. And it could, at times, lead to nitpicking and judgmental attitudes because one was not holy enough in someone else's estimation. Thankfully, we moved out of that some number of years later, focusing more on principles of the Word and not focusing so much on the outward identities, but rather the inward, which are even more important. Therein is where we should also focus. Even in our day, there are those that would say, well, you're not enough of whatever it is that they're expecting because your seat's not tied correctly, or you don't say the words right, or you're not dressed as we would expect you to be dressed, and all of those kinds of things. And we can be nitpicky, and we can get focused on the externals and forget about the internals. And anyone and everyone can be prone to such things. And so scripturally, we need to shy away from that. Yes, we should be modest. Yes, we should be a set apart people, and we should not be vulgar or lewd or obscene in any manner of our walk or our demonstration of our walk. But there's something that is a little bit more involved here in the book of Yochanan, John chapter number 15. Yeshua says in verse 10 and following, "If you guard my commands, you shall stay in my love, even as I have guarded my Father's commands and stay in his love. These words have I spoken to you so that my joy might be in you and that your joy might be complete. And this is my command, that you love one another as I have loved you." And so there is this factor of love that has to be considered. In 1 Peter chapter number 1, verse 13 and following says, "Therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, being sober, set your expectations perfectly upon the favor that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah, as obedient children, not conforming yourself to the former lust in your ignorance. Instead, as the one who called you is set apart, so you also should be set apart in all behavior, because it has been written," and he quotes, "Be set apart, for I am set apart." That's verse number 16. And now we drop down to verse 22 in that same chapter. It says, "Now that you have been cleansed your lives in obeying the truth through the Spirit to unfeigned brotherly love, love one another fervently with a clean heart." Let's go over to 1 Yochanan, again, chapter number 1. And it says in chapter 2, verse 9, "The one who says he's in the light and hates his brother is in the darkness until now. The one who loves his brother stays in the light, and there is no stumbling block in him." Somehow, Barry, you've taken the idea of set apartness and holiness, and now you started preaching on love. Well, the idea that we are set apart, or as we might say, that we have become holy or striving for a holy status of being, is that it is demonstrated by how we treat one another. I can have perfection in dress and mannerism and in words and by all appearances in my deeds. But if I have resentments and animosities and all this pent up negative stuff toward my brother, especially, I've missed the point. So if we're going to be a holy people, a set apart people, we have to learn to love one another. Now, that's a very general concept, and everyone, well, certainly I just love everybody. Well, love is more than words. Love is deeds. Love is action. Love is compassion. Love is reproof with a tender heart, considering your own self, lest you also be taken in the same condition and sins. Love is the love of Messiah for us, that we in turn demonstrate towards someone else. So if we're going to be holy, if we're going to be a set apart people, we're going to be identified as those that have the character and the heart of the Most High. If Yeshua is going to be demonstrated through us, let it be said, I know those are a holy people because of the love that they demonstrate for one another. So love somebody today, and I'll see you again tomorrow. To then, shalom.